Hi, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over the 818 support tier list. So, as always, you can find a link to this Google Doc in the description if you just want to jump around and find your favorite parts, and I'll have timestamps as well to help you navigate as much as you want. And then, if you go into the Google Doc itself, you can always access a little mini guide for each champion. So, if you click on the little Google Doc below each champion there, it'll take you to a link so you can find more stats in the Wikia for that champion, a rating system that I'll explain in just a second for that champion, recommended runes, recommended items, and if I have an in-depth guide for the champion, then I've got it linked there as well. As far as the rating system go, this is just a 1 to 5 scale that I came up with just to help give you an idea about what a champion can be good at, just as a quick snapshot. 1 being a champion is one of the worst champions at that particular task for that role. Then a 5 being the champion is one of the best at that role for that particular task. So in terms of lane pressure, just how likely is a champion able to get priority in the lane? How likely can they push, harass, do that type of stuff, win the lane? Kill threat is how likely is a champion to be able to get kills, or at least to cause kills for the team. Safety is how likely is a champion able to survive ganks and camping, aggression, and then to a lesser extent also positioning in later game team fights. Scaling, how well does the champion perform over time, and then reliability, how likely is it that someone can perform this champion at an optimal level. So there's 2 components of that. One is how mechanically demanding is a champion, how many difficult decisions are there, how hard is it to execute their skill shots. And then also the other part is how well do they fit into the overall metagame, in the sense that how easy are they to counter by other champions that are popular, how well do they perform when they're behind, that type of stuff. So it's just a real quick system to help you out with that. If you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to check out also my best tips to gain elo. There's a lot of great stuff in there. It talks about micro, talks about macro, talks about dodging, all kinds of stuff I get questions for all the time. So I put all that in one video a couple of weeks for you, so be sure to check that out. As far as the methodology here, I'm looking at primarily a plat minus audience. This is going to be a bit different from what you would see in pro play and what you would see in challenger level streams. Talking to non-specialists with moderate practice. So if you're a one-trick Thresh, for example, Thresh would obviously be a lot higher on the tier list. He's very good one-trickable champion. And then I look primarily at the potential power of a champion and not just the raw popularity or stats. Popularity and stats come into it, but when you're thinking of moving into a new patch and evolving metagames, stats are always backward looking, so they can help you predict the future a little bit, but there is room for rational debate to sort of challenge stats to some extent. So even if something has really high stats, I might rate it a little bit lower if I think that people just aren't playing a certain champion, or just like well enough, or just haven't really learned that a certain champion is good in the meta at a certain time. So I do follow stats, I do follow popularity when creating the tier list, but also occasionally I think there might be a little spice about a champion that people just aren't properly recognizing yet. So I'll take that into account as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. I'm going to try, as I always say, to do this relatively quickly, but I'm going to give it an honest effort to see if we can get through this in 30 to 45 minutes. Because I like to give good depth to my tier list, but at the same time, I know people would like them to be a little bit faster, especially newer people that might be scared of like hour-long videos. So let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, I moved Rakan back up to number 1 after playing him a lot this week. I do think that it's really important to have an engaged champion on your team, because people are still playing assassins, people are still playing a lot of champions that don't have a lot of crowd control in various roles around the map. So it's really nice to just have that good point-click engage. He has really good roaming. He has pretty good scaling. His itemization options are great. He can still get a Zeeks, which is good with pretty much any AD carry, including like Janna Misfortune, whereas if you get something like an Ardent Sensor, that's not going to be great on them. You can still get Ardent if you want. But I think that Zeeks is good for both the attack speed on-hit champions, like a Kai'Sa or a Twitch, and then also the burst champions, like maybe a Draven or a Jhin. So I think it's a really good item, and he's one of the few supports that's really strong right now that can take advantage of that item in a big way. Now, there have been more CC champs coming back into the meta, so you're seeing more Leona in particular, who's been pretty popular lately. Malzahar is seeing a bit more traction. And just a couple other CC champs. What you can do is actually take Cleanse into that, and then you can take Unsealed Spellbook and then pick up your Ignites if you have to. So Cleanse gets you out of a lot of trouble when you are playing against a Leona or a Morgana, Lux. There's all kinds of things that might have good ways to sort of stuff your engage. the cleanse can help you out quite a bit. You're not really that deadly in the lane unless the jungler comes and camps for you anyways. If you have Zyra with you, she's not super popular right now, but like you can get some kills in the laning phase. But, you know, by and large, you're pretty weak in terms of lane pressure, so you're not losing as much by not taking Ignite as you might lose with other champions. So I just think that's an option that doesn't get taken enough. You'll see it sometimes in pro play, but taking that cleanse can be very, very useful. And like I said, you can still get Ignite, you can still get Exhaust with Unsealed as it goes on for really strong all-ins. So I think that's a good way to counter some of the popular picks that against Rakan in the laning phase. Now, I do recommend Unsealed Spellbook. A lot of people still aren't on board with this yet. I think it's dramatically better than Airy. I don't know if pros are doing this yet. This is one thing that I really disagree with if they aren't doing it yet. I've seen a couple of Koreans do it. Yeah, a lot of people are still doing Barrier Airy, and I think that's bad. I think that Spellbook is so much better. So the reason that Spellbook is so good on Rakan is because you have arguably the best engage in the game, especially as a support role. You just press R, W, and boom, there's your hit. So it's kind of akin to Alistar, but I think it's even faster than Alistar's is. It's really, really hard to get around that. Also, he can jump to people to get an even further engage range. So if he uses his E to jump 600, then jump 600 more, and then ult Ws, then that engage range is like almost 2,000. So he can get on people from up to 2,000 range away. It's really, really hard to get away from him if he wants to start a fight. And that's good with Spellbook because that means you can use your summoner, you can use that bonus summoner that you get all the time. Pretty much, like whenever your ult's off cooldown, boom, go use a summoner. Go start a fight, use Exhaust, use Ignite, use Heal, use Barrier. You can use Ghost even to like run and catch up to a fight if you're falling behind, or you can use Teleport to, you know, go top lane or something in some circumstances and turn fights around. So he just uses all of the summoners really, really well. If you didn't take cleanse, if you took Ignite, but you might need a cleanse for a fight, maybe you want to eat an Ash Arrow or something and then cleanse it off to take a hit for the team, or like maybe you need to step in front of that Rammus and eat his taunt and then cleanse it away. You can do that as well. So I think that he's very, very good with Unsealed Spellbook. He likes perfect timing, allows you to do some great dives early. Biscuit helps get you through the laning phase. Cosmic Insight helps compensate for the nerf to his ultimate, where it gave you 10 extra seconds early on. The extra 5% cooldown gives you a reduction of like 7 or 8 seconds on your first one. So really, really handy. Then you can still get Bone Plating Chrysalis, so you're still a beast. You know, you can survive through the laning phase. It's just really good, and they just nerfed Airy, so it doesn't do as much damage early. It's already hard to hit your Qs in lane. It's a very slender skill shot. They nerfed it a while ago to where it has a long cooldown early on, so you'd have to get multiple points into it, which means you don't have points in your W or your E, which is just not that effective, I think. Now, some of these pros, like, they might have to do it at a high level just so they can do something and not get completely bulldozed in the lane, but I think certainly if you're under Diamond, I wouldn't do it. Not Airy. Now, Guardian is something that's interesting. It does give you some survivability, but in the laning phase, it just gets poked off you so easily. Just someone auto-attacks you, and boom, it triggers your Guardian. So I feel like it's really pretty weak in the laning phase most of the time. Now, later on, it does give you a decent shield, but because you're not going to be building that much HP, the shield on Guardian's not going to be that high, and you don't have other defensive stats. Like, you're not going to have a ton of armor and magic resist to help make that shield more valuable. So, it's nice. I just don't think it's as great as the new Spellbook on him. I think the new Spellbook is just phenomenal on Rakan. So, that's what I would recommend, even though, you know, this is where I'm going to disagree with some high elo people there. Although they're very smart people, obviously they know what they're doing. I just think that below Diamond, you can just abuse Spellbook so hard. And I would always go coin. I get asked this all the time. On almost any champion, I would just go coin. And the reason is, you want to make sure you get your wards by 10 minutes. You know, 10 to 12 minutes. If you go Spell Thieves, and you're, especially on Rakan, it's so hard. Like, you have a low auto attack range, your Q is on a long cooldown early. It's very difficult to trigger that Spell Thieves in a lot of lanes, and so you're going to fall really far behind. Yes, the AP is nice. He does have good AP scaling, but you're just going to fall behind in gold, and you're going to fall behind in wards, and it's just not worth it. The coin almost guarantees that you're going to get your wards by 10 to 12, and then if games go longer, which the lower the elo goes, the longer the games go, because people don't close out you know, if you start getting up in 25, 30 minutes, it could be thousands of gold extra off of coin than off of spell thieves. Because you have to remember, once the lane breaks, you can't just walk up to the enemy line and like throw Qs at them to try to trigger spell thieves most of the time. But you can be standing near other people that are wave clearing and get coins off of it. So, you know, especially for longer games, then coin ends up becoming much, much more efficient. I think that's a no-brainer on Rakan, but I've even been taking coin on Nami, which is one of the best spell thieves users out there. But just for that reason, like, just later on you get a lot more gold off of it. And if you get camped, then you're still going to be okay. Like, if you fall behind early and you have spell thieves, you're not going to be able to harass, or if the enemy jungler camps you, even if you don't die, you may not be able to harass. So that's just a few things I think about Rakan and some of the other champs in terms of coin and spell thieves. But yeah, then I think just going at, yeah, Nomad, Ionian, Zeeks, and then this is what you'll go most of the time. After that, it's kind of up in the air. You could get Redemption earlier. You could get Locket. If your AD carry is really far ahead and it's like a Kai'Sa or a Twitch or something, you could get Ardent Sensor. Just be aware you're going to be squishier if you do that, but he has a lot of different builds he can do. So very, very strong champion. Can get bulldozed potentially in the lane by things like Zyra, Draven, Leona, stuff like that. But I think if you can survive the laning phase, having the ability to initiate and fight, especially if the rest of your team doesn't have an engage, if everybody's playing assassins or fighters or whatever, so powerful in the mid to late game. Okay, Nami's the classic, really high pick. I mean, I think a lot of people would probably have her at number 1. I had her at number 1 last tier list. She is still really strong. It's totally possible she should still be number 1. I just feel like if your team needs engage, Rakan can help you close and just really take over the mid game. But Nami is a beast at taking over the early game. So it's impossible to trade with her. That W not only does damage, but also heals you. And she can abuse Athene's Unholy Grail, which a lot of people don't get that. It's really, really strong on Nami because it gives you the 100% mana regen that you need early on, and it gives you AP to help you keep up with the harassment, and it gives you extra healing off of the Athenes itself. So, it's phenomenally strong, and then you also get additional scaling off of any extra fairy charms that you get. So every fairy charm that you get is going to give you an extra 5 AP. So you complete Athenes, and then you work towards Redemption next. Every time you get a fairy charm towards that, you get an extra 5 AP. 5 AP is worth about 110 gold. Fairy charm costs 125 gold, so you're almost doubling the value of fairy charm every time you buy it. So it's great. It's like every time you buy a fairy charm, you get an extra 110 gold. It's awesome. It's like an extra assist for free. Okay, I guess we'll just get out of that. I don't know why this is tripping out, but very, very good. So I would go Athenes most of the time on her, and then usually I like to go Redemption, but sometimes you can actually go Mikhail's. So if they are running something like an Ashe or a Sejuani, or even like a Thresh who's very popular, and you need to cleanse your AD carry, then Mikhail's can be pretty good. Now, it sounds like a non-combo going Athenes into Mikhail's, and that's true. You don't get the extra health regen off of Mikhail's, but you do get an extra 20 AP off of Mikhail's, because that 100% AP does translate over into the extra 100% mana regen translates into the extra 20 AP off of Athenes. So it does still have some synergy. You know, the 20 AP is going to be worth an extra 400 gold. So very good value there. So you can do that. So she has pretty good flexibility. She doesn't have a lot of defensive items she can get. Like, you can get a Zeeks on her if you really have to, if they have a super fed assassin. But she really doesn't want to do that because she scales so well off of plus healing and shielding and AP because of the way that her wave scales and the bouncing. Be sure to check out the Nami guide if you want to know more about kind of the specific numbers there. But yeah, she has great aggression early with her wave. She has pretty good CC. You can slow people with your E and then hit them with bubbles. You have your wave, which is another knock up and hit. So a couple of different ways for Yasuo to trigger. Just really good. I mean, she can speed people up, you know, with her E to get to places, which is really undervalued. So she has a lot of sticking power, a lot of peeling power, a lot of power early on in the game, pretty good scaling later on. She is squishy, and if there's an assassin that gets in your face, sometimes it can be hard to deal with that. But other than that, she's very good. And her ranges are very long, too, because of the bounce mechanic. So you can throw, like, your wave on your ally if they're 725 away from you, and it'll bounce an additional 725. So if you're trying to, like, help your team run down people and kill them, you can stay on the back line 725 away and then cast your wave, and it'll bounce around and hit people and give your allies speed boost, trigger Aerie, trigger Athenes, all of that stuff. versus someone like a Soraka has to be 450 range close to heal people, or like a Lulu. Now Lulu kind of has this effect too, and we'll talk about Lulu in a second, but she can put picks on people and then use her Q to hit them off of the picks. So Lulu has the potential to have a lot of range like that as well. But not a lot of champions have that kind of range. And so that means she can position much more safely in fights. She can hang out very far near the back and still be really effective. Because she doesn't have to get close to enemies to make her spells functional. So, very, very powerful positioning. Super powerful early. Some of the best lane pressure. Maybe not kill people, but you can run them out of lane 1v2 a lot of times. Especially if they don't have hard engage. So, very, very strong champion. Definitely debatable if she could be number 1. She was number 1 last week. I felt like the engage seems really powerful on this patch again. And then like being able to, I've tried out taking that cleanse with Unsealed Spellbook in some of the tough matchups. And that's why Rakan's a bit higher. But I still think Nami's phenomenal right now. And if you really want to climb elo, she's probably one of my highest picks if you don't have a lot of experience on either Nami or Rakan. I think she's a bit easier to play. But she's great. Okay, Pyke is another one that I personally haven't played a ton of in solo queue. I've been practicing him a lot in like normals on viewers night or if I get dodges, and I think he's extremely powerful right now. I think he's the best hook champion. So he does have nice engage like Rakan. A major difference though is I think he's the best tank champion, which sounds kind of ironic, but you want to build him tanky. And I'll explain why if it'll show us the numbers here. Okay. So he has a really nice hook. He's actually super safe compared to a lot of other champions because you can go invisible. It speeds you up even if you're running away. And you, of course, have your E to dash away. So that is a really powerful and under-discussed aspect of his kit is you can like go into the enemy jungle and deep ward really easily off of that W. Even if they detect you or find you, you can just E and dash away around walls. You're virtually never going to die to ganks. You just have so much utility, and you can build tanky and still be very, very effective with him. You still have a lot of CC, and you have that execute, which is very good. So the reason that people build tanky on Pyke is because of his passive. You heal a lot. A lot. So even in kind of the early game, you'll heal for 40% of the gray health. If you take Revitalize, it heals you for even more, even maybe 15% extra on that. So healing always scales better with resistances. I talk about this a lot when I talk about plus healing and shielding champs. Pretty much, if you have 100 armor and somebody wants to do 200 damage to you, they're actually going to have to do 400 physical damage to do that because the 100 armor is going to reduce that damage by 50%. Okay? So in order to do 200 damage, they have to do 400. Versus if you had 0 armor, they would only have to do 200 damage to stick 200 damage on you. So the more resistance you have, the more effective your health is, and that means the more effective your healing is. So when you get tankiness with Pyke and you're healing back for 300 off of your passive, that means that if you have 100 armor, they're going to have to do 600 damage to counteract that 300 healing that you just did. You see how that works? So that's why Tank Pyke is so powerful and the way that he trades. So usually how it works is you'll try to hook somebody with your Q and then you go in with your E for the stun. But if you do that, you're out of movement for a little bit. So then people can swarm you and potentially kill you, right? So you have to use your W to go invisible and run back out if it's a hot situation. Then once you pop out of vision, you heal all of that back up with your gray health. And then you're free to go back in for another hook and another E within a few seconds. So that's why people get tank stuff on Pyke, and that's why they go Aftershock, so that you get those extra resistances to help you survive when you go in, so you can actually get out, go invisible, and then heal it all back with your grayskin. There's no cooldown on this, so you can do this over and over again, and it heals you for a ton, especially if you take Revitalize, which is really good, you know, on him. So it's really powerful. If he does get some extra AD, then that scales as well for healing of his maximum health. So he's very strong. I mean, he has really good CC, he has really good safety, I just talked about, and then his execute. I just learned this last night, actually. The new executes are free. I thought it used to cost a lot of extra mana every time you execute to 100 mana, but it's actually free whenever you get these resets. So he has resets, and that execute is super helpful, especially against things, you know, there are a lot of like Sterix gauges running around, and you know, hex drinkers and just all sorts of shields and just other garbage to protect people. This cuts through all that shield and just straight executes them if they don't have a heal. Really powerful, and it generates a lot of extra gold, so he snowballs really hard. So he can actually get pretty good tank items as the game goes on because he's getting this extra gold and still giving it to his teammate as well. So you generate a lot of extra advantage, particularly if you're under platinum where people are just dying all the time. You know, just being able to get this extra gold really adds up for your team. So super powerful, very tanky. I mean, the only reason that he's down a little bit is he is kind of high skill cap. You do have to hit the hooks. You do have to land the stuns, and you have to kind of practice him and get a feel for when you can go in and when you shouldn't go in and die. So it takes a little bit of practice. He can get bullied out in lane. You do have some healing, but if you can't hit your hook in lane, if they hide behind minions or they just have a lot of mobility and they keep dodging it, then you know you can get bulldozed in lane. You have very limited wave clear. You don't have a lot of utility for your AD carry. So you can't really peel them that well. Like, you can slow them with Q. You know, you can kind of get a stun with your E. So you have some tools, but it's not as good as something like a Janna or a Thresh at peeling off your AD carry. And it's not going to apply the same kind of pressure as Lulu or Nami. But I think he is the best tank right now, and I think he is the best hook champion right now. So he's definitely worth giving a shot to. So you want to go mobility boots. You can go Eye of the Equinox. I actually think that going coin is definitely valuable as well for the reasons I described before with nomads. So that's worth considering. Remember, this does not actually make you more tanky, Eye of the Equinox, but it does give you extra AD. So because all of his bonus health converts over to AD, so that's helpful. You get Frozen Heart, gives you a ton of... This is just such a great item on him because it gives you the armor that you want. You don't get any extra tankiness off of health, so you don't have to worry about the item not having health on it. Gives you 20% CDR, which is huge because you really want your ult up and your hooks up as much as possible. Gives you the extra attack speed slow. You're going to be close enough to the back line a lot of times where that's going to be effective. Then the extra mana is really nice just for spamming your hooks and just, you know, fishing, and eventually you'll hit people. He does have pretty high base mana, too, I think. Yeah, he's got 415 base mana versus something like... I don't know what Nautilus's number is or Thresh, but it feels like they have like 300 or something base. So his base stats are really high. He has 600 base health as well. So he has really awesome base stats also. So I think he's pretty good. I think Frozen Heart you would almost always want. If they have a lot of AP, you could consider going Spirit Visage early or maybe even Locket. Spirit Visage is phenomenal because you get 30% extra healing, but it's just kind of up to you. But I think that Frozen Heart is definitely super popular. If they have a mixed damage team, Spirit Visage is pretty good. You can also go something like a Knight's Vow, Locket, that type of stuff if you want a little bit of extraness. Extra sort of team utility. But yeah, overall, really strong champ right now. Now, I've moved Lulu up a little bit here too. I think there's a build on Lulu that a lot of people just aren't really going that can be strong, where you get 3 points of Q in lane. It gives you extra wave pressure so that you can push people in. And then you can go Athenes early, kind of like what I do with Nami. And it's really powerful because then your shield is actually going to heal people, and because your Q is AoE and can hit multiple people and you're going to have a few points in it, then it gives you bigger heals off of the Athenes. So I think Athenes is really strong because you have lots of different ways to deal damage in combat. It gives you the 100% mana regen that you need. Gives you a little bit of magic resist. So I think that Athenes is really powerful. And you're not missing out as much on the plus healing and shielding because you're not leveling up your shield that much with this build anyways. And remember, your ult doesn't scale with plus healing and shielding because it's just an infusion of health. So Lulu has never been that great with plus healing and shielding stat, but they have nerfed a lot of her adversaries. Like Janna primarily has been nerfed a ton. So Lulu, I think, definitively outscales Janna right now. You still have Polymorph, so you're very good against Assassins. So if they have like a Zed or a Talon, you know, something like that, she's always been very good against that. So she still has that going for her. Polymorph, very nice, especially against low-range AD carries like Kai'Sa. Vayne, people might be trying out Vayne next patch a lot more. Lulu is very good against Vayne, so you can harass her early, you can polymorph her, and then if you get your picks on her with the E, even if Vayne starts rolling around, you'll be able to see her because it provides true vision. It's something a lot of people don't realize. I don't think it spots a Kali anymore, but it will spot things like Vayne or Twitch if they're trying to run away. if you get picks on them. And then she scales really well with a lot of the champions that are popular right now because you get that extra attack speed off of Whimsy. And then also whenever you put your E on them, the picks, every time they auto attack, it does a lot of extra damage. It's very underestimated. I don't know if it's going to show us that or not. Looks like not. But even in the mid-game, it does like an extra like 60 on-hit damage or something, which is ridiculous. Now, Ginsu's does not trigger it twice. But just every time they auto-attack, they get an extra 60 on hit. It's really strong. So, she's very, very good with the on-hit champions like Kai'Sa, Twitch, Jinx. All these type of champs are going to be really strong with her. And then she has a very nice laning presence as well. Now, if you like to play Lulu a lot, I recommend probably banning Nami. Nami seems to stomp her in lane because Nami has a heal and Lulu doesn't. So that's rough. But I think the strategy here is similar in laning phase to like old school Karma before she got nerfed like 50 times, where you can just kind of push in, harass, under tower, and just play back and have a little bit of mobility with your Whimsy. But I think she's strong, and you can go Ardent. I don't think I have Athene's. Let me put Athene's on here. I don't know why I didn't put that on here. So you can do the Athene's and then Ardent. It's a pretty good combo. Now, she is someone who, in theory, could do Zeke's if they get really fed. It kind of makes sense on her because she doesn't scale that well with plus healing and shielding, as I mentioned before. You can increase your allies' attack speed with W, which means you're going to get more hits in with the Zeke's. And you can proactively use your ultimate. So even if just a tank goes in to engage, it's on such a low cooldown. Just go ahead, ult him. Why not? Give them that infusion of health. You can't overheal them with your ult. Give them that infusion of health, knock up, slow, and then that will trigger the Zeke's on your ally so that they get that extra damage in there. So I think that Zeke's, you know, not as good as it is on someone like Rakan, but it's still pretty dang good on her. So if your AD carries like super fed, then you can do a combination of like Ardent Sensor plus Zeke's, and that'll give them the double on-hit extra damage. And then put a Whimsy on them when they have the double on-hit damage, and you're off to the races. So I think there are a lot of different combinations with Lulu that people just haven't thought about or haven't done. Like getting Athene's, getting Zeke's, putting multiple points of Q in lane. Her E did get nerfed, the shield, but she's very useful even without her shield because you have the polymorph, you have your ult, you have really good wave clear for a support with your Q early on. So I think she's very powerful. I think she's very underrated. So you might consider taking Lulu, like I said before, against like assassin teams, or particularly if you have like Kai'Sa, Twitch, Jinx, people that are going to get a lot of attack speed. I think she can be very strong. So yeah, I moved her back up. I did play her a couple of times, and she feels pretty good. Especially, like, she's an especially good kind of peeler against assassins, since Janna doesn't feel nearly as good as she used to. Now, Lulu's not going to have a really high win rate. I think she only has like a 47 or 48% win rate, but I think a lot of that is because people just aren't itemizing her correctly, and they just aren't playing her correctly. A lot of people, like, it takes practice with her. She doesn't have a lot of difficult skill shots, but trying to figure out whether you should shield an ally or damage an enemy, or especially polymorph an enemy or Whimsy an ally, can be really tough decisions. You have to have a really good sort of game sense about, you know, what's the best thing to do, neutralize an enemy or buff an ally. So I think, and you can misclick that. Like Lulu, it's very easy to misclick with Lulu, because if there's an assassin right in your AD carry's face, and you're trying to polymorph the assassin, and you accidentally click on your AD carry, which is very common for a lot of people, and you speed up your AD carry instead of polymorphing the assassin, they're probably going to die. So that can be really rough. Great combination with champs that want to run at people too with Lulu. So if your team has something like an Olaf, a Hecarim, a Rammus, all of these are kind of like creeping back in a little bit. She's very good with that. So I think Lulu has a lot of synergy, a lot of potential, just a really bad matchup in a Nami. So yeah, I think she deserves to be tier 1. She's very strong. Okay, Alistar is another one that has been really popular lately. He just pretty good tank, nice point-click engage. Similar concept to Rakan, doesn't scale as well, but has more threat in the laning phase. Obviously tanky as well, so he can sit in combat. Itemizes a little bit differently. You know, he can still go Zeke's, but he can also go Locket, Knight's Vow, and get full value out of it. You can roam around really well with Alistar too. You get mobility boots. So just really good menacing character in lane. Doesn't scale as well as Rakan, doesn't have as much safety. He's tankier, but he can't get away. So if the fight goes south, you're going to die as Alistar. Whereas with Rakan, you can almost always get away. Because you can W over walls, you can jump to allies with your E, and you can just ult and run away with like 50% move speed if you have to. So I still like Rakan more in most circumstances, but Alistar is very good if you want that hard engage bully potential. Especially, like, he's a pretty good if you want a tank and a peeler, he's a good combo. So, like, if they have Leona, for example, and you really don't want to pick Rakan into Leona, but you still want some engage because they have, like, Leona Kaisa, so you want engage for later in the game. You know, early game, if Leona tries to go on your AD carry, you can just W and knock away the Kaisa, turn around, you know, start your trample, knock up the Leona, and then stun her, and you can trade a lot of damage back. So I think he has a lot of potential. Against some types of engaged champions, like a Zac, you can headbutt him out of the air to kind of counter their engage. Gragas, you can headbutt him and sort of neutralize his belly flop. If he tries to, like, flash body slam your AD carry or something, you can, you know, W into them, and there's a decent chance. If they both hit each other at the same time, if you headbutt him while he's belly flopping, I think they both just knock each other back. So he has some unique interactions that are powerful. Obviously, if you have, like, a Yasuo on your team, that's going to be a good combo. So I think Alistar is one of the better hard engaged tanks. I would still probably prefer Pyke a little bit, just because he's safer. And I think Pyke scales a little bit more, but Alistar is very, very good, particularly if you're getting up into platinum, you know, high gold platinum area, and you can count on your team to follow your engages a little bit more, then Alistar can be pretty strong. Make sure that you are pinging a lot before you engage. So just ping like 5 times so that they get the message that you're going to engage. Check your mini-map, make sure no one else is around, or that, like, it's going to be a fight that you want, and then do it. Because, like I said, you go in, you're not getting out. So that's why he's a bit lower. If Rakan, you go in and it looks bad, oops, you go back out. That's a huge difference. It's like you can ult W as Rakan and then E back out to your ally. You can do that in general, but you can also do that particularly if the jungler, like, pops out of a bush or something, and you're like, oh crap, I didn't realize the jungler was there, then you can escape. Alistar does not have a reverse gear, so that's why I think he deserves to be tier 1. Very strong, but not quite as hard as Rakan, or not quite as high as Rakan, because he's a little bit less flexible. Okay, moving on to the tier 2 here. Morgana's still great. I think they did nerf her mana regen, and you can definitely feel that. I've played Morg a couple of times this patch. You know, your W costs a little bit more. They dropped your mana regen from 15 to 11, which, to be fair, it never should have been 15 in the first place. I don't know why Zyra's is still 15, but anyways, so you can't push as much as you used to. The nerf to Aerie means that Aerie's not really that great on her anymore, I don't think. 'Cause, like, what are you going to do? You're going to tag him with your W, you're going to ding him for like 10 with your Aerie, and they're just going to regen back through it, you know, with their fleet footwork or their Doran shield or whatever. So I just don't think it's worth going Aerie anymore. I think the Unsealed Spellbook's actually interesting on her. You can go Barrier instead of Aerie if you want, but Unsealed, kind of similar to Rakan, like, you can start fights. You don't really need a lot of other stuff. You really like Stopwatch because you want to get Zhonya's anyways. So I do think that Unsealed is definitely worth exploring on her, just because you would really like Stopwatch and Cosmic, and you can still get Bone Plating and Revitalize. So I think going that stuff, and then going Ionian Boots, and then Nomad's Medallion. Don't do Spell Thieves on her. Yes, you can trigger, you know, Spell Thieves pretty easily with your W, but the extra damage is not going to matter in the lane, and then you're just going to get a lot more gold over time with Nomads. And the extra movement speed's pretty nice too, so even though you can get your wards on time probably with Spell Thieves, I would still just go Nomads most of the time. And then Zhonya's is almost always what you want to rush. It just allows you to start fights, you know, with your flash if you need to, right? So you have that flash engage, flash bind, so it just gives you a lot more flexibility. I mean, you can not do Zhonya's if you want to, but you have to play a lot more defensively. And then after that, it's kind of up to you. I think Redemption's on the table. It could be really good. That does make your Black Shield bigger if you get plus healing and shielding. A lot of people don't realize that. Zeke's is actually another one that can be okay, sort of similar to Lulu. You don't scale that great with plus healing and shielding. It's okay on you. You're already going to be a bit tankier with Zhonya's. You can hold people in place with your ultimate. You can use it proactively if you flash forward. So I don't think Zeke's is as good on her as it is on Rakan or even Lulu, but I think that it's definitely an option that you can do in certain circumstances, although you may not need to because you're already going to have Zhonya's, which is going to protect you from assassins. So You may not need it, but it could be a decent buff on your ally if you want to do that. You can also get something like Ardent Sensor if you really want to. Black Shield does trigger Ardent Sensor. But once again, it's okay. I mean, most of the time when you take Morgana, I would think that you have a really good assassin player on your team and you want to protect him. That's why I would take Morgana. Because if you have like a Katarina especially is insane with Black Shield, or even if you have a really good like Twitch player and they're running a lot of CC like a Leona or a Sejuani or something like that, Black Shield can be very frustrating to get through. So I think that she is very strong as a counter pick. I wouldn't necessarily first pick her, but into things like Leona, Ashe, Thresh. Thresh is getting a lot more popular. I think that she can be very, very strong because she not only has the Black Shield, but she can also start fights and bind. It's not as reliable as Rakan or Alistar, but you can definitely bind some people and pick up some kills. So she's really good, well-rounded. The only problem is, like, it feels like you just kind of have to sit there in lane. You don't have a lot of pressure. You can't trade very well early on unless you hit your bind, which is really hard to hit around minions. So she's just not like as strong and as proactive as some of the earlier picks in Tier 1. But she's very good at what she does, which is protect, you know, squishy champions that are vulnerable to crowd control. So I think there is definitely a place for her, especially after Tom Kench just got completely just crushed in the last patch, and he's been nerfed a lot this season, so I wouldn't recommend Tom anymore, even though I love Tom. I love playing Tom. I do not like playing against Tom. I think Morgana gains a lot of extra equity because she kind of functions in a similar way where she can stop. She's used to stop crowd control. So I think that's handy. Looks like we're going to be closer to 45 minutes to an hour, but whatever. Whatever. I got to have my depth in here and explain stuff. Okay, Janna is still pretty good. I bumped her down to Tier 2. She was Tier 1 last time. I tried out a couple of games. Sort of similar to Morgana. You just can't really be as proactive anymore, and it just feels bad. Janna's never been that great early, but especially after, you know, the nerf to her shield near the beginning of the season where it has an 18-second cooldown early on, makes it very, very difficult to trade, especially if you want to do multiple points in your W to harass early. Then you're just never going to have your shield. And now it's super weak. It breaks very easily. It starts decaying after like a second or something like that. Maybe it's after 2 seconds. I don't know. But like the decay combined with the insanely long cooldown on it, combined with the nerf to area and Scorch, you just can't really harass that well anymore. She has a pretty low attack range too. I think it's like 450 or 500 attack range. I think. Maybe I'm thinking of Morgana. Janna might have 550. I mean, I guess I could click on her and see. But either way, she just doesn't put up a lot of harass early. And then I think with the nerf to all of the plus healing and shielding items... Okay, it is actually 550. But with the nerf to all of the plus healing and shielding items, the nerf to Celerity, which was actually uniquely relevant on her because of her passive. So Celerity, Scorch, Airy all got nerfed. Plus healing and shielding items got nerfed. Her shield, you know, has been nerfed from 10 seconds to 18 seconds early. It now decays over time. So she has just been punked. Now she can still be powerful in late game team fights if you have multiple items. If you have like Redemption plus Mikhail's, you know, that is handy. I just think that most of the time I would just rather have Nami early on because Nami still scales pretty well. Nami's a much better abuser of both Ardent Sensor and Athene's, which are two items that did not get nerfed that hard compared to Redemption and Mikhail's by the plus healing and shielding nerfs. Athene's actually got buffed really hard on that patch. And then Ardent Sensor, like, yeah, you lose 2% plus healing and shielding, but you're not really getting it for the plus healing and shielding. You're getting it for the extra buff to your AD carry with the attack speed and the on-hit damage and all that stuff. So I just think that her itemization, just all of those reasons, itemization is worse, runes are worse, marquee skill, her shield is much worse. So I love Janna. I mean, last season I had almost 700 games as Janna. I play a lot. I know we have a lot of Janna fans on the channel, but I just feel like it's really rough. If you're against like a tank or something in lane, you're against like a Braum maybe, just something that's a pushover lane, and you have a higher scaling AD carry. So if you have something like Kaisa or Twitch or Jinx, and they're rocking like a I'm trying to think of something that wouldn't run you over in lane. They're rocking like a Caitlyn or a Sivir or just something that's going to get outscaled. Maybe like a bad Jhin. or something like that. And they have Braum, and you can just kind of like just sort of get through the laning phase and just peel later. Maybe it's worth it. She is uniquely good against champions like Zac, Lee Sin, Rammus, people that want to like run at you that you can interrupt with two different things with your tornado and your ultimate. Like, that's very handy, but I think the circumstances where I would pick her are definitely a lot more limited. The Leona matchup is also way worse than it used to be. Normally, I might put her higher because she's a great counter to Leona historically, but they slowed down the speed of her tornado near the end of last season, which is something that hardly anybody talked about except for me, but it's a big deal in certain matchups, and Leona is one of them. So you have to respond with your tornado like a quarter second faster than you used to, or she's going to hit you anyways. Because now with the slower tornado, if you cast it when you used to be able to cast it to try to stop her, she'll get close enough to where her empowered Q, which gives her extra auto attack range, will still be able to hit the AD carry or whomever she engaged on. So you have to like almost throw that tornado like the millisecond that you see her use her E. So the window is a lot lower, and a lot of times you like it's so fast you have to throw it preemptively. Like I had someone in a video say like, why are you throwing those tornadoes so early? When Leona is using her E, she didn't even connect with her E. And my response was, it already has to be in the air by the time it touches the champion. As soon as you see her stick her little thing out there, like her sword, her light sword, like you have to throw it. So it's a lot tighter to make that work, and I feel like that matchup favors Leona now. So it's tough. And the same thing with like Thresh, you have a bit more time to react, but it's similar though. If he hooks somebody and you throw your tornado and it's slower, if he gets in flay range, it's still going to be really bad. So I don't know. Her matchups into some of these, historic matchups that she's been very good into, like Thresh, like Leona, are much worse. And she's okay, but I would only pick her if like you need like hard peel. Like they have really hard engage, like Zac, Lee, Rammus, all of this stuff. They have like 2 or more of those types of champions on the team. Then maybe. But yeah, it's rough. Okay, so Leona is getting a lot of popularity right now. She did get a small buff to her W. She is very good against some of these squishy champions, so she's really good against Rakan, and she's really good against, well, pretty good against Nami, depending on the Nami. But yeah, she has a lot of all-in potential, a lot of kill potential, especially if you have like a Draven on your team, a Jhin, or a Misfortune. You can definitely kill Leona, or kill people as Leona, especially like in bronze, silver, and like low gold. I think that she can be a total beast. People will not respect her engage range. But once you get a bit higher than that, it gets tougher because people will know when you can engage and they can bait you really easily. It's similar to Alistar in that if you go in, you're not coming back out, and so you better kill him. I think that her engage is more conditional than Alistar's. You can only do it on one person, whereas Alistar can knock up an entire team. I mean, you can like slow and potentially stun an entire team with your ult, but it's just not the same. There's a lot more like ifs with her. But she is very tanky. She does a lot of damage in the early game. She has a really big CC chain. If she hits the E, then the Q, then the ult, you can chain CC someone for like 3 or 4 seconds. So yeah, she's really strong. She has a really low cooldown on her ult, and you can engage from really far with that if you aim it correctly. So you can engage from further than Alistar. So I think she's alright. I mean, she's very good snowball-y champ if you just want to bulldoze your lane and try to close out. If you have a really aggressive AD carry, if you're duoed with somebody you can trust, or you look them up on op.gg at the start of the game, which you should be doing every time, and you see, hey, this guy's got 500 Draven games. I think we can rock and roll with this dude. Then you can pick Leona and crush him. Versus, if you do the op.gg and you're like, hey, this guy's like first timing Ezreal, he's auto-filled bot, maybe don't pick Leona. So this is like, more so than any other champion so far, you really need to understand like team comps and like really trust your AD carry to follow up, because if you're not taking advantage of her early game aggression, she's going to get outscaled really hard by these other champions. So you need to do your research and pick her carefully. Very dangerous to first pick her too, because if they pick Morgana or Tom Kench, or even Alistar, Braum, like a lot of these other peeler tanky champions are going to make your life really hard. So I would if you're going to play her, I would play her as a counter pick, or if you know your AD carry is really good and you just want to try to crush early, maybe pick her. Okay, so Zyra is another one who can do a lot of damage early. I think she's the best AP champion on the list. If you need AP damage on your team, so like if your team goes 4 AD and you need AP, she's great. Zyra's a lot better at gold and lower. She starts to get a bit tougher at plat, but she can dish out a ton of damage early. She has 15 base mana reach in, so you can just spam your plants, you know, in lane. Does a lot of damage. I think that kind of a newer Electrocute with Taste of Blood build can be pretty good. It gives you some sustain, gives you some really good poking patterns. The Airy is not, definitely don't do Airy anymore. Common is still up for discussion. You know, because her plants lower the cooldown on comets, that's still pretty good. Scorch is a lot weaker than it used to be. So I haven't really tried out the Electrocute build on her, but I think that because you can proc Electrocute more often in lane now, because you can proc it, I think, at 25 seconds, and you can do it so easily with Zyra. You just hit him with a Q, a plant hits him, you auto-attack him, boom, there it goes. Anyways, so I think she can be good. She is still very vulnerable to assassins, so if they have like a Zed or a LeBlanc or a Fizz or something like that, it's really, really tough. She can be vulnerable to poke, so if they're running like a Xerath or a Lux or a Vel'Koz or a Misfortune support, all of those are kind of weird these days, but those do counter her pretty hard if they outrange her. But otherwise, I mean, she can be pretty good in these champs. If you catch them, then you can definitely kill them, or at least pressure them really hard early. So she's very, very lane dominant. I think if you want to pick someone to like super oppress the lane, I would probably pick either Nami or Zyra. Nami is safer and more versatile, but Zyra is much more likely to get kills. So, you know, if you're smurfing or, you know, you just want to gain a lot of elo and like bronze, silver, low gold, I think you can definitely play Zyra and get a lot. It gets harder at higher elos because people will respect your damage and potentially camp you and gank you. She's very susceptible to ganks. She has, you know, no escape. She's squishy, but very oppressive if you're ahead. Okay, Thresh is another champion where he's becoming more popular. His win rate's going up. He's getting a lot stronger. I think a lot of this has to do with Tahm Kench falling out of the meta a little bit, Morgana falling out of the meta. You know, they're nerfing a lot of other champions around him. They're nerfing Braum this coming patch. He's very good into Leona because you can flay back the Leona when she tries to engage with her E, which unlike Janna, which just knocks them up temporarily, Thresh actually like knocks them back. So it's a lot more reliable to knock back the Leona or Lee Sin, Zac, those types of hard engage champs. Rammus, a lot of uses there. Lantern, very helpful as well. Great to get people into your lane to gank. Also great for getting your allies out of really bad situations. He still has his hook. That's going to be pretty strong. He has pretty decent like all-in pressure early on. If you land that flay, start autoing and ignite people. He does quite a bit of early game damage. He is squishy early, so that's a concern. The reason that I have him down here lower is he's very difficult to play correctly. You really have to hit those hooks. Flay is deceptively a lot more difficult to use correctly than you would think. If you're trying to flay over your back to like bring people towards you, it's really easy to miss that without a lot of practice. And yeah, I mean, he can just get bulldozed in lane. He has no way to get through the minion wave. I mean, you can do something fancy like try to flay the minions to the side and then hook. Like there are a lot of like, if you're a one-trick Thresh, really advanced things you can do. But in general, it's very difficult to play around the minion wave in the laning phase, which means that things like Nami, Lulu are just going to harass you a lot. Zyra are going to crush you in the laning phase. But if you're really good on him, if you land those hooks, he does have a great combination of peeling with his E, engage with his hook. Especially, you know, since things like Janna have fallen down a little bit and you're in the market for a peel champion, but you also want engage because engage is really important in this meta because other positions don't have engage as often, then Thresh could be your pick. I would say that I personally like Pyke a lot more than Thresh. I think Pyke is more reliable. I think he's safer. I think that he has more utility in fights with his resets on his R. So I think that Pyke is just Thresh 2.0 that's better right now. That's why, you know, I have Pyke higher and Thresh a little bit lower. But Thresh has much better defensive tools in the sense that that flay can peel people and your lantern can save people if they click on it. The thing with Pyke is it's a lot better if you have some monkeys on your team. If you have some goofballs on your team, he's a lot better, because even if you land your hook, you know, you still don't have to go in. Even if you do go in with your E and they don't follow up, a lot of times you can still get back out because you're very tanky off of Aftershock and just your really high base stats. You can just W and run back out. Whereas with Thresh, if you go in, like, you're probably dead, you know, if they don't follow you. And people have to actually click on your lantern. Yes, the lantern is a great defensive tool. There's so many times you throw the lantern right in front of somebody, they don't click on it, either because they just don't, or because, you know, enemies are covering it up with wards or standing on it or something like that, or they're CC chained. So there's just a lot more ifs with Thresh. I think he's harder to play in general, and he requires a bit more coordination from your team to make maximum use out of his kit. So I think he can be really good. The higher the elo goes, the better he is, not only because higher elo players are more likely to hit the skill shots and things, but also because your team is going to know how to play around it. They're going to click on the lanterns. They're going to follow up with your engages. So he's better the elo goes, but I do think that he definitely deserves to be tier 2. I've moved him up quite a bit from where he has been in the past. I think I had him tier 3 last patch, but he's certainly moving up. Okay, going into tier 3, and then we'll move on from there, and I guess we'll stop at about an hour. Sona I've got down a bit lower. Sona does have a really high win rate. I think she has like 53-something win rate. I just think that Nami's just better than her in virtually every conceivable way. I mean, Sona does have her ult, so she can, you know, she can hard stun people instead of just knocking them up for a little bit like Nami, but it's much shorter range, and it's on a longer cooldown than Nami's. Let me get the grid here detailed. There we go. Not mid lane, support. There we go. So yeah, she's at 53.3. I mean, the big thing for me is her trading patterns early are way, way worse than Nami. So you can trade like with your Q, but your W is absurdly expensive for how little healing it does. In order to make that work, you really have to be highly coordinated with your team and use it effectively. I talk about this in the Sona guide, but you need to heal 2 people with it, and you need to be able to use that shield. So it gives you a small shield that most people don't even notice. But you need to be actively trading. Like, an auto attack needs to be flying towards you so that you can use that shield and get maximum benefit out of it. And that just doesn't happen in solo queue at times. Whereas with Nami, you just walk up and just W somebody. You know, it does the damage, and it just bounces and heals people. So it's just a lot lower maintenance, and if your AD carry takes really bad trades, or you take bad trades, the single target W heal is a lot better than Sona's single target. So Sona's, it's just a lot worse in the laning phase. And, like, the thing about Nami as well is, like, the damage spell is also the healing spell. That's the big difference. With Sona, you have to Q, you know, to do the damage, and then if you want to heal, you have to do the W, which is ineffective and costs a lot of mana. But then also, it requires 2 spells. So it's a lot worse. Now, in theory, Sona does scale better if you get, like, 3 items. You know, if you get your Athenes plus Ardent Censer plus Redemption, yes, in a team fight, 5-on-5, Sona's going to outscale Nami. But she has to be much closer to hit people with the shield. You know, you have to be within 450 range to get that shield on somebody with your W. And you have to be like an auto attack range to make your power cord function. So makes you a lot more vulnerable to assassins or just getting hit by AoE, you know, effects in team fights. You know, Nami can stand like 700 or 800 units back, like way on the back line, and still be really effective. Whereas Sona has to be kind of in the middle, almost on the front line, to make sure that your Q aura and your W aura are hitting everybody to give out those bonuses. So I think that's a lot more dangerous. Nami also can consistently, like, speed herself and her allies up more. Yes, Sona can do that with her E, but she's just going to be a lot more vulnerable. And then Nami also has her bubble for hard CC, a more consistent slow she can apply with her E. So just Nami's just better than Sona in almost every way, except for if it's 3 items, 5v5 team fight, into the game. Sona's probably going to be a little bit better, but if you like Sona, I highly recommend giving Nami a try. You can still win with Sona. Obviously, people do all the time. She has a really high win rate, but, you know, Nami's only, what, 0.8 higher win rate, but just Nami is a lot stronger. If you play them both, you try it out, you will really like Nami, I think. Okay, Fiddlesticks has fallen down. You know, he was tier 1 a few patches ago. Now I've got him down to tier 3. The nerfs to Scorch and Airy hurt him a lot. I don't remember if he got direct nerfs. I think he got a direct nerf to his E, which wasn't a huge deal. But, like, in combination, the nerf to E plus the nerf to Airy plus the nerf to Scorch is a pretty big deal. Also, a lot of people are taking more sustain. You know, people are learning against, like, Fiddlesticks, they can just take Doran's Shield and, you know, either Fleet Footwork or just something else that heals and get through the laning phase. So, yeah, he's just a lot less effective in the laning phase at pushing and harassing as he used to be. He does still have really nice synergy, you know, like, with his ult later on, you can still start fights, but one of the big reasons, you know, at least I played Fiddle was because he was impossible to interact with in the laning phase. And just did a lot of free damage. You just pretty much auto won every lane if you played Fiddle against most matchups. But now that people are going more sustained stuff, people are playing less Misfortune and Jhin. They're still playing them. They're still popular, but you're seeing things like Kaisa more that are going to take Fleet Footwork. Jinx, that'll probably take Fleet Footwork against a Fiddle. It makes it a lot tougher. So if you really need AP damage, you don't want to do Zyra, you kind of want some harder engage. You know, his Fear is very good against melee champs. And that's another thing that's changed, is like he's very good against melee assassins, where there are still some of those, but there are more ranged champs and more tanks that are showing up in different positions. It's still a lot of assassins and things, but less so than there was like 3 or 4 patches ago. So with the nerf to Electrocute and stuff like that. So, he's still okay. He's just not quite as good as he was. But if you want an AP champ, you don't like Zyra, I think he's probably the second best option. Braum is someone who is phenomenal in pro play, and I think is okay, like, in solo queue. The reason is he's excellent on a 0 gold economy, so he has pretty bad scaling on all of his abilities. He obviously doesn't have plus healing and shielding. He has very low, like, HP, armor scaling, and stuff like that on the rest of his kit. So when you're a pro level player, you know, a lot of times you're going to be able to buy tier 2 boots, your tier 3 ward item, and a bunch of control wards. That's it. You know, in a lot of games, right? Like, maybe you can get one item. You might be able to buy, like, a Knight's Vow or a Locket, but that's it. Versus in solo queue, you know, where each team gets 30 kills a game, and games last 35 minutes, and you routinely can get to 3 or 4 items a lot of times, then he's just going to get blasted by things like, you know, Nami, Rakan, Lulu. All of these champs are going to do a lot better with items than he does. So he's very, very good in a no-gold economy. But many of these other supports are better in other, you know, other situations. Also, he's really good at 5v5 team fights. So he's not as good at the Fiesta. He's okay, but he really shines in a 5v5 team fight where he can put that debuff on a bunch of different targets and just cause a lot of... you know, a lot of problems. And then also that shield, you know, if everyone's grouped up, you're getting more value out of that shield because you're blocking, you know, 2, maybe 3 different champions worth of projectiles coming in versus just running around, you know, trying to help your team not die to this, you know, 15-0 Akali. Your shield's just not going to do that much, you know, in a lot of those circumstances. So I think that's why he's much better in organized play with a low gold economy, but he can still work in solo queue. If you really want to play him, you know, in some circumstances, I think that something like Lucian would be really good because his double shot does help you stack the Braum passive better. And Lucian is very popular right now, and he is getting buffed next patch. So, you know, there's a very real possibility if they pick Lucian that, you know, you could pick Braum, and it would be pretty good. So that's the one, you know, pairing that you might want to think about if you really want to play Braum. Okay, Soraka, she's okay. I mean, the nerf to plus healing and shielding items hurt her a lot because she really has to get Mikhail's early. She needs that health regen to keep up. She needs that cleanse, and that was the item that was hit the hardest because it lost 5% of its plus healing and shielding. You know, they nerfed Airy, they nerfed Scorch, so like the battle Soraka where you get 3 points in E is much worse than it used to be. So yeah, just a lot of stuff around her has been nerfed. She's very susceptible to assassins. She's a decent pick against something like a Nami maybe or a Lulu. Like, you can heal through their harass, but healing's already pretty easy, you know, with Doran's Shield for your 80 carry, with Doran's Shield and like Fleet Footwork, or you know, some of them are even taking like Time Warp Tonic Biscuits in really tough matchups. So I think you just, like, the healing's okay. There are just so many ways that you can get grievous wounds in this meta. The plus healing and shielding stat is a lot worse. There's a lot of hard engage, hard CC champs. So I think it's just really tough to be Soraka. Because I think Nami's just way better at the early game, just bully people out than Soraka is. And I think that she just has more utility later on. Soraka doesn't have any hard CC. She has her silence with an E, which is helpful sometimes, but it's not the same as a Nami bubble or a Lulu polymorph or, you know, a lot of the other CC out there. So she's okay. Can you win with Soraka? Sure. I know a lot of people like her. It's just this is a tougher patch for Soraka compared to some patches of yore, some patches back in the day. Then finally Brand, and then we'll go ahead and close it out here. Brand is okay. I mean, I just prefer Zyra most of the time. That's what it comes down to. You know, Brand can't harass through the minion wave as well as Zyra. Zyra can spawn all of her plants, use her E and her Q and her ult through a minion wave, completely ignore it, still do a ton of damage. Whereas Brand, rather, to be really effective, has to hit his Q for the full combo, and that can be blocked by minions. So I think that's problematic. But if you are really wanting a 5v5 team fight, if they have a lot of melee champions, so if they have 3 or 4 melee champions and both teams want to 5v5 team fight, he can be pretty good. Melee is important because you want your ultimate to be able to bounce off a lot of people, and then when the passive triggers, you want it to explode on a lot of people. So you want like a team that has crowd control that can hold people still, and you want the enemy team to all be grouped up. You know, if they have like a Nar, an Orianna, a Kindred, and a Caitlyn, and they're all spread out, like, your ult is going to do virtually nothing. So, you know, I would definitely, if you want to do Brand, only 4th or 5th pick him, and make sure that you have good visibility of their team comp to see if it's something you want to do. Also, his ult, you know, can get blocked and shut down by Yasuo's Windwall or Braum's shield, so you'll be careful about that. Okay. Honorable mentions, Tahm Kench is still, like, maybe sort of in some circumstances okay. I think if you're Challenger or Master, maybe even Diamond, Tahm Kench can still be pretty good because he can use his ult to make really good macro plays. He can save allies with his W. But he's just going to get bulldozed in lane in most elos. A lot of people aren't going to use your ult. You know, you can spam ping your jungler, hey, come down here, I've got my ult, let's go kill bottom. And they'll be like, whatever, dude, I'm going to go farm wolves, you know. So it's just really hard to use that ult effectively, and that's one of the best tools that he has for pro play, is his macro pressure with the ult. It's basically like a TF ult for 2, you know, it's on 120-second cooldown. So if you didn't notice, in pro play, they really like their globals. You know, macro is so important. That's why things like Shin, Ryze, Galio, I don't know why they don't play Twisted Fate more. He must have just have some really bad matchups early game, but like Talia, anytime you can move around the map like that, it's really strong. So that's part of why Tom has been super, you know, just a super popular pick. He's also very safe against other tanks. So it's just really hard to kill him. Like, you have to poke him out early. And in pro play, everybody plays tanks. It's like Tom versus Braum every game. Or like maybe Alistar sprinkled in there. So really, really good in pro play. Still like okay, even after the nerfs in pro play, but in solo queue, much worse. Blitzcrank can work. I just think that Pyke and Thresh are way better. Like, Blitz does have the hook. You can get kills off of him, but he has very little other utility. Bard, interesting. I know people like Bard. His auto attack range is just too low for those meeps. Going in for 500 range is really risky in a lot of matchups, and I just don't think the payoff's there. Like, he's interesting, but the low auto attack range and his itemization is also very suspect. He doesn't have good items you get on him, so he's okay. Karma has been nerfed a lot. I just wouldn't get her. She has very conditional CC, you know, with her delayed W route. It's all right. Yes, can she harass early with her Q? Sure. But I think that, you know, I think that either Lulu or Nami are just going to do that a lot better. I think Lulu specifically is almost the same thing as Karma. Like, good wave clear, good harass early with the Q, but just scales astronomically better than Karma does. So if you really like Karma, I would recommend Lulu. Nautilus, it's okay. Like, he has a nice fat hitbox and a fast animation on his hook, so it's really easy to hit people with it if it's open field. But you can't hook through walls. It's easy to get it caught up on minions because it's such a fat hitbox. He does have a nice stun. Like, his auto attack animation is really slow, so like that root on his passive is not quite as effective as you would think at first glance. And then his ultimate is very nice. It can knock up a lot of people, but I just think that he just doesn't have the damage for a hard engaged champ that some of these other ones do, like Leona or Alistar. And he's a lot squishier. So he's okay. I know that like 8Ball on the channel really likes him, but he's got some problems. Taric, I don't think he's that great. There was somebody that was talking Taric was going to be tier 1. I don't remember if that was Lolalytics or what, like last patch, but just no. No, he has a lot of problems. I mean, I like Taric. I played a lot of Taric. He was probably my most played champ for the first, like, maybe month of the season. But he's been nerfed a lot. You know, his ultimate, I don't remember, it's like 180-second cooldown now. His E, they took 50 damage off of it a while ago because he was getting played a ton in pro play. They nerfed tier, which is integral to how he functions. So I think he just has a ton of problems. He's just going to get bulldozed in the lane, and he's going to get outscaled, you know, by Lulu, Nami, you know, a lot of other champs. So can you win with him? Sure, but there are probably better options. Veigar, he's cute. The cage is nice. If they get a Quicksilver Sash, you get destroyed, or if they have a Mikhail. So you could maybe get away with it in, like, bronze or silver. But it gets a bit harder after that. If they have any kind of, like, blink, they can maybe get out of the cage as well. So he's okay. I mean, he's fun. He's interesting, but I think there are probably better options most of the time. Vel'Koz, decent counter pick into something like a Brand or a Zyra if you want to outrange him. He does do a lot of AoE damage, so if you want, like, long range, you know, AP damage, like, he could be okay, but I would only pick him, like, 4th or 5th pick in very specific circumstances. Zillion's okay. I get asked about him a lot. I just think Lulu's a better version of Zillion. You still have your ult that can save people, but you can be more proactive in lane, much more reliable with your Q. Your polymorph is much more valuable, I think, than like praying that you can stick a double bomb on somebody. I mean, he's okay. He's got some good uses. He can speed people up, you know, run around the map. His ultimate can be clutch, so he's all right. I just feel like, you know, once again, there are better choices above him. And then Shin, I just wouldn't do it in solo queue. You see it in pro play some, for the same reasons you see Tom, because the global pressure is really nice. Like, the flash taunt's okay. His requires too much coordination, you know? Your team, like, has to really make use of his ultimate. Your team has to actually stand in your Spirit Refuge or whatever that blocks auto attacks. It's just a lot of ifs. You have to actually hit your taunt. So Shin is interesting, but I think after the nerf, especially to Banner of Command, and I guess they didn't nerf CZ Rot Portal, but there's, like, the itemization is kind of problematic. Sort of similar to Braum, like, he's better on, like, 0 items in the 0 item economy. Very low gold. But in, like, solo queue where people are routinely going to get 3 or 4 items, he's just going to get outscaled, so that's what I think. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. If you made it to the end here, be sure, like, subscribe. It helps other people find the content. I should have tier lists up for AD carry, mid lane, and I'm going to try to see if I can do top and jungle on this patch as well. We'll see how much time I have. But I should have a lot of new content coming out for you over the next few days. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.